Growing up in Solwezi, Lieutenant General Barry, as a white boy, never had it easy as he was a regular victim of racism and bullying from other children.
About growing up in Solwezi, I can tell you I didn't have it easy. I didn't have it easy. On a personal note, I found it difficult because, and I don't say too much, because I mean we're all young, but a white boy in a school where predominantly we're all dark-skinned, I was not accepted. I was not. I was bullied a lot, made fun of, called names, and I think that's something that I was very sensitive about that time. And so even from my primary school, there are very few people that I would even remember now as friends. Yeah, and being that's Solwezi. I mean, you can understand that, and there was nothing wrong with people, you know, using bad language against you because of your color, even in the schools. Because you know, we were told to run with, you know, to take off shoes because not everybody could afford sneakers. So PT, what we call PE those days, take off shoes. Now my feet are they're soft, very soft. I can hardly walk on anything. But I had to. I was not given any leeway. I had to remove my shoes and limp around on the football pitch. So again, I think in all those ways it was not. When you talked of things like sunburn, sunburn was not something you'd know. And when teachers would tell you get out in the sun, you'd get home sick. But nevertheless, I soldiered on. I went into the Boy Scouts when I was in primary school, and I became the Scout Police. I was even commanding police, rather Boy Scout flights at the age of about maybe 10, 11, somewhere there. So, and I remember meeting the late president, our first Republican president, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. When he came to Solwezi, I was actually sick. I had chickenpox. But I insisted on being on the parade to see the president. And I remember for the first time seeing him in the flesh, and I just remember him putting his hand on my head and saying, "Well done, young man," with his handkerchief. So that was on an Independence Day, I think, in Solwezi, at the airport. Secondary school, people get mocked for being fat, for being thin, for being short, and I was one of those just for being white. But again, I quickly got over it. I have a humorous way of dealing with things. I don't take things to heart. When I was young, yes, because you can imagine in those days at school, where if I was in grade 5, then I was 10 years old. I sat on a desk with a man who had a beard and had children. And that was in I think grade 7. So now you can imagine, if this guy is bullying you, what do you do? What can you say? And this was the thing. We went in that school and there was nothing. There were small desks. If you were lucky, you sat on a desk. If not, you sat in the corner on a brick. And these were places where we were told to bring blocks to school to help build the school. Partially the classrooms were done, others were not. So I mean, it was a rough place. So even just coming from International School of Lusaka, and I used to travel with my parents, my dad, to the UK quite often, then to come back and get into that school with that sort of environment, yeah, it was challenging. But I got, like I said, when you get older, then people around you tend to sympathize with you, and then also when you're at secondary school, it's more about performance. And I can't say I was always number one in my class, but at least I was giving them a run for their money. I was either 3, 4, 2, maybe, I don't think I even got 1. Maybe once I must have gotten 1. And that was to my father's annoyance, because he says, I'm a teacher in this school. And he was my teacher as well, when we were in Solwezi. So he says, how do you fail to beat some of these others? But it wasn't something that he'd really rub into, you know, to keep on irritating me. No, he'd say it once and we would laugh it off. But I think there I got the respect because of my academic prowess, I think. at least nikamba Nyanja sometimes, but I speak Nyanja in my broken way.
Okay.
But I think I get by very well. I've spent a lot of my time in the south, but in the military. And in the military, it's predominantly Nyanja you're speaking. It's the most common language. So I've managed to get by. Tonga, I can understand. Kaonde, I understand. When I try and speak it, I tend to mix up. When I forget now, I start going to Nyanja again. But my grandfather, when I was in Solwezi, whenever we visited him, he would always insist that when you are in my house, you speak Kaonde. So we used to speak it, but it was just, to avoid being laughed at by your grandfather. Yeah, but so I have a fairly good understanding of the language. People say I'm fluent in speaking it. I'll be honest, I'm not fluent, but I can understand you fluently, as well as Bemba, Nyanja. Tonga, somewhere there. Lozi, I'm lost. My military training was tough. Racism in those days was not so much, but I did experience a few of those incidences. And I'll tell you, one of them was where my drill instructor took me out of the barracks and punished me the whole night. And at some point he says, "I'm just waiting for you to go." So he said. And he said, "I'm waiting for you. Have you had enough yet?" I said, "No, sir, I'm not." And eventually, somewhere out of my anger, I stood up and I pointed in his face and I said, "You will salute me one day." I was a cadet. He was a flight sergeant. He said, "You will salute me one day." He got a little bit startled, and after that I went back down and continued with my press-ups or whatever I was being told to do. And that's when he says, "On your feet, get to bed." I stood up, and the usual response is, "Thank you, sir." And I was walking away. Then he says, I don't know what he said. He got my attention. He called my name, and as I turned around, he saluted and said, "Good night, sir." That was really something. He was the first person to run up to me when I got commissioned to come and pick up my weapon, because as an officer, you're not allowed to hold weapons immediately after you are commissioned. He was the first person came sprinting up to me to pick up the rifle and salute me. "Congratulations, sir." And ever since then, everything I did, he was one of the first to always congratulate me or come and see me to pass his congratulations. He's the late now. I won't mention his name, but others would know him if I just mentioned